Good morning and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar today. We want to spend some time with you talking about the many and various kinds of scams related to the coronavirus. Next slide, please. My name is Todd Casso, and I'm the director of the Federal Trade Commission's Midwest Region office in Chicago. And the FTC is thrilled to be partnering today with the Missouri Attorney General's office and the Better Business Bureau based in St. Louis to bring you this special webinar on COVID-19 related scams. Thank you so much to the BBB for hosting this webinar and to all of you for joining us. We have a great lineup of speakers today. In addition to me, you're going to be hearing from Amy Haywood with the Missouri Attorney General's office and from Michelle Corey with the Better Business Bureau. And I want to mention at the outset that although we'd love to be able to take your questions today, the webinar format prevents us from doing so, but we will be providing information throughout the webinar on how you can contact the FTC, the Missouri Attorney General's office, and the Better Business Bureau to have your questions answered. So for those of you who may not be familiar with us, the Federal Trade Commission is the nation's consumer protection agency. Our mission is to combat deceptive and unfair practices in the marketplace, both through law enforcement and education. And my office is one of 8 regional offices that the FTC has throughout the United States. We're based in Chicago, and we cover 11 states here in the Midwest, all the way from Kentucky to the Dakotas, including the great state of Missouri. Next, please. One thing we know from all health emergencies and natural disasters is this, that scammers follow the headlines. They take advantage of what may be occurring in the news to find new ways to get consumers to part with their money or their personal financial information. And the current coronavirus pandemic is no exception. We saw pretty quickly that scammers were going to use this health crisis to play on consumers' fears to perpetrate a whole slew of both old and new scams. Now, the FTC is very interested in hearing from all of you about the types of COVID-19 related scams you're encountering in the marketplace. I'd ask you to please report scams to us at ftc.gov/complaint. The FTC maintains a database of consumer fraud and identity theft complaints called Consumer Sentinel. And that database includes complaints that are submitted directly to the FTC, as well as complaints submitted to other agencies like some Attorney General's offices and many Better Business Bureau offices. Those agencies then share the complaints they receive with the FTC's Consumer Sentinel network. And in that way, Consumer Sentinel is a one-stop shop of fraud complaints that's accessible to law enforcers here in Missouri and all across the United States. So thus far, Consumer Sentinel has received over 41,000 reports about COVID-related scams. And those complaints report nearly $29 million in losses. And we'll talk in a minute about the most common complaints we're seeing. So from Missouri consumers, we've thus far received nearly 500 reports of COVID-related scams. And at the FTC, we always say that reported fraud is just the tip of the iceberg of the actual fraud that exists in the marketplace. So we know the issue is much larger than only those complaints we received. Next, please. So let's talk about some of the scams we're seeing. First and most importantly are fake treatments and cures. Everything from miracle cures and vaccine offers and home testing kits to scams that target people on Medicare. And in a few minutes, we'll talk about what the FTC and the FDA have been doing about these claims of fake cures and treatments. But the takeaway tip is this: ignore online and telephone offers for vaccinations, tests, or cures. As you know, at this point, there are no vaccines or cures for COVID-19. So you know that any claim to the contrary is simply false. Right now, scammers are out there hawking bogus products to prevent, treat, or cure the coronavirus. If you see that type of ad, stop and think to yourself, if there's actually been a medical breakthrough, are you really going to hear about it for the first time from an ad or sales pitch on Facebook or something that you receive in a text message or an email? The answer to that is clearly no. So train yourself to just ignore those types of false ads. And if you're on Medicare, you might get calls, emails, or see ads that claim to give you special access, either to testing kits or treatments. But that's not how Medicare works. Medicare representatives will never call you to offer special access or to put you in line for a test or treatment. Anyone who purports to be acting on behalf of Medicare and makes that type of offer is a scammer. Next, please. Scammers are also sending emails and text messages that are trying to get your personal information, your money, or to load malware onto your computer. And the slide shows an example of a fake email purporting to be the World Health Organization that would put malware on your computer if you clicked on the link to download safety measures. We've also seen that scammers have bought up lots of domain names that include the word coronavirus, even including misspellings of the word. But if you visit one of those sites, they'll also likely put malware on your device. So here's the tip. Don't click on links in emails or text messages from sources you don't know. Doing so could download a virus onto your computer or other device. Because of that, you want to make sure that the anti-malware and antivirus software on your computer is up to date. Next, let's talk about robocalls. Now that people are working from home more often, they might be picking up calls they wouldn't usually answer. That means we're probably all being exposed to more robocalls. Scammers have been quick to adjust their robocalls to try to take advantage of consumers' fears about the pandemic, offering fake cures, prevention solutions, test kits, special access for Medicare recipients, health insurance, cleaning supplies, and the list goes on. But they're also tailoring their regular robocall scams. So we've seen some Social Security Administration robocalls that now reference the coronavirus, telling consumers that their Social Security number has been suspended due to suspicious activity relating to the pandemic. We've also seen mortgage and student loan debt relief robocalls that mention relief programs purportedly relating to the COVID-19 situation. Here's what you can do to avoid falling victim. Simply hang up on illegal robocallers. Then block the number that appeared on your caller ID using the blocking service on your phone or provided by your carrier. Then report the call to the Federal Trade Commission at ftc.gov/complaint. An important thing to remember with robocalls, don't press any numbers. The recording might say that pressing a number will let you speak to a live operator or remove you from their call list, but it's more likely to lead to more robocalls instead. So when you pick up the phone and encounter a robocall, just hang up. Next, please. Now here's another headline that scammers are definitely following. The Coronavirus Aid Relief Economic Act, or CARES Act, provides financial help for individuals. That's the Economic Impact Payment Program, or stimulus checks that you've been hearing about, where the government is sending checks to qualifying consumers. You may have already received one. Criminals use that type of headline to make their phony pitches sound more credible. Here's what you need to know. If someone calls or emails you out of the blue claiming there's money available from a government agency, but you have to make an upfront payment or provide some personal or financial information in order to get the money, hang up the phone. The government will not ask you to pay to get these stimulus checks, nor will they call and ask for sensitive information like your bank account number or your Social Security number. We've also been hearing from consumers who've received a text message indicating that their government stimulus check is ready and to click on a link for more information. That too is a scam. The government is not going to send you a text message about your stimulus check. Scammers are trying to take advantage of the fact that consumers have heard about the checks, but don't always know exactly how or when they're going to be distributed. So ignore anyone who calls, texts, or emails to help you get money from the government. So let's go over the facts on who's actually getting a stimulus check. Next slide, please. Taxpayers who filed a 2018 or 2019 tax return are eligible for full payments if they have incomes below certain thresholds: $75,000 for individuals, $112,500 for a head of household, or $150,000 for married couples. Now, when the CARES Act first passed, there was a lot of confusion about eligibility for individuals who don't file taxes or otherwise have no taxable income, including Social Security recipients and supplemental security income recipients. Treasury has now clarified that Social Security and SSI recipients are eligible for payments like everyone else, and people with no taxable income are eligible too. Next, please. So how much will you get? Most people will get $1,200 or $2,400 per couple, although some will get less depending on their income. To receive economic impact payments for children, parents or guardians must claim the child as a dependent. Parents will receive $500 per qualifying child under the age of 17. Young adults, like college students, can't get the payment themselves if someone else claims them as a dependent. So how will you get your payment? Next slide, please. If you filed taxes in 2018 or 2019, or you don't file taxes but do get Social Security payments, you don't have to do anything to get your payment. This covers the vast majority of people. The government already has the information it needs to determine eligibility and to send you your money. For Social Security and SSI recipients, the IRS will use direct deposit information on file with the Social Security Administration. Payments will arrive automatically. Taxpayers without direct deposit on file with the IRS will receive a check in the mail automatically. Likewise, if you get a paper check from Social Security, you'll receive a paper check from the IRS, again, automatically. If you want to get direct deposit instead of a check, or you need to update your direct deposit information on file with the IRS, there's an online portal available for this purpose on the IRS website called Get My Payment. To access this portal, always start at irs.gov/coronavirus. Next, please. So what if you typically don't file a tax return? How will you get your payment then? In limited circumstances, the IRS will take information through an online portal located again at irs.gov/coronavirus. Look for non-filers enter payment info here. People who don't usually file federal taxes, so-called non-filers, include people who have gross income under $12,200 or $24,400 for married couples, have no income, or are not required to file taxes for some other reason. To get their payments, non-filers must fill out a short form to submit to the IRS through the online portal. People who get benefits from Social Security do not need to use the online portal. But if you need to use the portal, please be very careful. The IRS online portal will take you to a .com website used for free e-filings. But always get to that website through the IRS's website and never through a hyperlink in a text or an email. That's because the form you have to fill out will require you to provide sensitive personal and financial information like your Social Security number and your bank account number. Now, within 15 days after the economic impact payment is made, either through direct deposit or a paper check, the IRS will be mailing a letter to the taxpayer's last known address. The letter will provide information on how the payment was made and how to report it if you didn't receive the payment. If you receive that letter, but you haven't yet received your stimulus funds, then you know there's a problem that you need to investigate. Next, please. So that's the economic impact payments. Now let's talk about law enforcement. An important part of the FTC's work is targeting companies that make claims without the scientific proof to back them up. And during this pandemic, the FTC's attorneys and investigators are working closely with the Food and Drug Administration to find the companies who are peddling the fake cure, treatment, and prevention products that we talked about earlier. The two agencies have sent warning letters to a number of companies, giving them 48 hours to report back on how they'll address the concerns raised. The warning letters relate to COVID treatment and cure claims about everything from teas to essential oils to IV or ozone therapies, stem cell treatments, and high doses of vitamin C. Once a letter is sent, both the FTC and the FDA then watch to make sure the claims are removed, and they watch social media, online marketplaces, and complaints to the FTC to make sure they really have cut it out. We're happy to report that the response to our warning letters has been very good. The companies have adjusted their advertising to remove the claims that we were concerned about. All told, the FTC has now sent close to 120 warning letters to companies making false cure, treatment, or prevention claims. We also recently announced the filing of a lawsuit against a California company that claimed that a vitamin C supplement could treat or prevent the coronavirus. The defendants in that case have already agreed to a court order preventing such claims in the future. Next, please. The FTC is also tackling illegal coronavirus robocalls. Since the pandemic began, FTC staff has sent 12 letters to companies that help scammy telemarketers, warning those companies about the penalties for doing so. These are providers of voice over internet protocol or VoIP services, companies that transmit illegal robocalls or carry them for telemarketers. The last set of 3 letters were sent jointly by the FTC and the Federal Communications Commission. They were sent to 3 companies who we knew had transmitted robocalls offering fraudulent COVID-19 home testing kits or claiming that their HVAC services will help fight the virus. The letters gave the companies 48 hours to stop transmitting these calls, and if they don't, the FCC will authorize US voice providers to block all calls from those companies. So that's another way that the FTC, working with our partners, has been disrupting robocallers who are trying to take advantage of the pandemic. Next, please. And the last thing I'd like to encourage you to do is to stay informed. One way we can all help each other during the pandemic is by sharing good, trustworthy resources when we find them. And I hope you'll share the information on this slide in your community. You can keep up to date with the latest scams by signing up for the FTC's consumer alerts. Visit ftc.gov/subscribe in order to do so. As I've mentioned, your reports to the FTC do matter. To us, to all the law enforcers who have access to our Consumer Sentinel network, and to the people in your community you help every time you report a scam. Please, whenever you spot a suspicious claim or anything you think might be a scam, tell the FTC at ftc.gov/complaint. And at the bottom of the slide are 3 key resources for you to share. To know the latest about the pandemic, go to coronavirus.gov, which takes you straight to the CDC. To learn more about scams and how to avoid them, visit ftc.gov/coronavirus. And to find out what else is going on across the federal government, along with lots of resources from other agencies, go to usa.gov/coronavirus. Thank you for your time and attention today. If you have any questions, feel free to contact the FTC using the resources on the slide. And now I'd like to introduce Amy Haywood from the Missouri Attorney General's Office.
Thank you, Todd. I appreciate that. And I want to thank both Todd and Michelle from the BBB for the opportunity to participate in this webinar. I think it's great that we get to speak directly to consumers during this incredibly important time. I want to start off by talking generally about what we do as the Attorney General's Office in the Consumer Protection section. Our section consists of hotline operators and intake specialists that take the web forms that are submitted over the website, as well as consumer advocates, investigators, attorneys, and support staff. And we're all dedicated to working on consumer issues for Missourians. What that often looks like is when you submit a complaint, we'll have an advocate call you and talk to you about your complaint and dispute. And one of our first methods that we try is to see if we can't mediate the dispute between the consumer and the business. This is often quite successful and results in millions of dollars actually each year returned to Missourians through this mediation process. Sometimes you just need a consumer advocate in your corner to advocate for you with your business dispute. Other times where the complaints lead us are to patterns or scams that we see develop. And in those situations, we'll assign complaints to investigators and to attorneys to consider for either civil or criminal action. Our main statute is the Missouri Merchandising Practices Act. That prohibits fraud, deceit, false promises, and unfair practices in connection with the sale of goods or services. And that's the primary consumer statute that we use to protect you as consumers. We also often work with multi-state partners, other AG offices, and as Todd mentioned too, we're working closely with our federal partners, not only at the FTC, but DOJ and many other federal partners as well. Our section also has responsibility for antitrust, privacy, nonprofit and charity, as well as no-call and telemarketing enforcement. I know Todd briefly talked on robocalls, and you may be more susceptible to them because we're home now, and we'll answer calls that we normally wouldn't. Interesting as well is that not only are we home, but it seems that a lot of call centers are closed too. So there is a slight silver lining with regard to robocalls, and that is there have been reports that they are actually down. According to one report, nationally down almost 60%. And we looked at our own complaint numbers compared to April of 2019 versus April of 2020, and we've seen our complaints decrease about 2/3. So it seems right now, at least, robocalls are slightly down from where they were before. So a slight bit of good news during these times. But I will turn now, Chelsea, if you could turn to the next slide. I'll turn now to what we're doing during these times and what we're seeing as far as complaints to our office. So the first thing I want to talk about is price gouging. Price gouging laws vary from state to state, and they are state laws. There is no current federal price gouging law, although I understand there are potentially some bills introduced in Congress, but currently nothing on the books. Therefore, it's falling to state AGs, and we're rising to that challenge in looking at price gouging based on our state laws. So as I mentioned, Missouri, we use the Missouri Merchandising Practices Act, and in Missouri, price gouging is an unfair practice under that act. And price gouging is defined as to take advantage of a person's physical or mental impairment or hardship caused by extreme temporary conditions and charge a price substantially above the previous market price of the merchandise in the seller's trade area. So what does that mean, and how are we enforcing it? Well, if you consider that previously this statute, and there's other portions, or excuse me, the regulation, and there's other portions of that regulation that refer to disaster areas. So typically and historically, we've used the price gouging regulation in relation to natural disasters. Obviously, this is a completely new animal because we're talking about a national or global pandemic. So if you consider historically that the way that price gouging, this regulation had been used, consider in the way the areas of tornadoes or extreme flooding, which has happened before in Missouri. For example, if people are displaced from their homes and you have hotels in the area that are ramping up their prices, they're taking advantage of the fact that there's a decreased amount of lodging available. So they're taking advantage of something that is in scarce demand. So what does that look like in terms of this pandemic? An early area that we focused on, and actually, can you go to the next slide? So there are several areas that we focused on, and one of the earliest was the concept of personal protective equipment, or PPE. because it was so incredibly important and continues to be so incredibly important that our medical personnel and our first responders have access to this critical equipment because they're on the front lines of the pandemic. So initially we sent out, very early on, a couple months ago, we sent out a couple statements. One warned to be on the lookout for medical supply chain price gouging, and another we did in connection with the Missouri Hospital Association about the hoarding of medical supplies. Once again, being very concerned about a situation where you have somebody looking to profiteer within the medical supply chain when it was so very critical and continues to be very critical to make sure that PPE gets to our medical personnel. So what we look at, what we have been looking at and receiving complaints on, I'm going to talk about face masks in particular, because this has been an interesting area, and an area where we've seen a lot of complaints. Consider the fact that before this pandemic, most of us didn't really need to use them. They were used in medical environments, people that work with chemicals, construction, painting, but a lot of us, we didn't used to need to have them to go to the grocery store and run our errands. So face masks are making an appearance in the consumer world more prominently than ever before. And so one thing I would encourage everybody to do as far as face masks is educate yourself as far as what you need for societal use of a face mask. The CDC has guidelines out there discussing what you should be wearing and using and what should be reserved for medical personnel. So I really encourage you to educate yourself on the CDC website as well as the FDA website as far as particular masks and the types that are out there and what you should be doing as far as societal use. But the types of masks that we saw complaints about, and you may have heard this term now quite a bit, is an N95 face mask. Now these are heavier, they're designed to keep out about 95% of small particles. And again, typically used by healthcare workers, those with that use chemicals, etc. We're seeing this enter the mainstream consumer world, and we were seeing reports of people buying these up and then selling them at double, triple the price. Now your typical N95 face mask is going to run somewhere from $3 to $6. So if you're seeing these advertised for $12 to $15, or we've seen them as high as $20, that should raise red flags for you. So watch out for that. KN95 face masks, you may also have heard that term. Those are being sold quite a bit. The FDA, they're the China equivalent. The FDA issued an order about those, saying that certain brands met certification, but then recently revised that guidance last week. So I'd encourage you to look on the FDA website regarding guidance about KN95 masks. But once again, if you're seeing those for double, triple the price, that should raise a red flag for you. And again, we've seen those $12, $15, $20 that have been advertised, whether in stores or online. Finally, there's surgical masks, and we've also had reports of price gouging relating to those. We've seen them sold $50 for $50, and you would think that sounds good, but consider that normally they're sold anywhere from about 25 cents to 60 cents. So that should be a red flag too, as far as how much those are costing. All told, we've sent about 10 cease and desist letters related to COVID issues out of our office, largely relating to price gouging and largely relating to masks. But again, I would encourage you to really do research on the CDC website and the FDA website if you're considering buying masks, and then do some research about what they're going for. Because I will say this, the legitimate companies are not raising their prices. So again, anywhere $12, $15, $20, that should raise a red flag for you on masks. Turning next to online sellers, early on, Amazon and Facebook were quite proactive as trying to combat price gouging. I'll start with Amazon specifically. They reached out to attorneys general offices and told us what they were doing on their platforms to kind of root out potential price gouging in these critical areas like face masks, hand sanitizer, also a big one that was selling for potentially more than normal. So they ran analytics, and they're staying very on top of that issue. As far as how they've assisted Missouri, they ran analytics related to Missouri sellers for us, and we sent CIDs, or civil investigative demands, to 8 Missouri sellers where the analytics showed they were potentially charging anywhere from 2 to 19 times the price on face masks and hand sanitizers. And those investigations continue. And there's been reports other AG offices have done the same, looking into particular online sellers on Amazon's platform through help from Amazon in identifying those. Facebook Marketplace has also been proactive. They reached out to us and provided a contact that we can, through which we can provide them with complaints, and they can look into any complaints we receive about Facebook Marketplace and people trying to sell, again, those key items like face masks, hand sanitizer, gloves, even toilet paper. So they're being proactive and looking for that on their platform as well. Turning next to groceries, we have received complaints about potential price gouging on your average groceries within a grocery store: eggs, beef, toilet paper, all of that. As you have probably realized, the pandemic has caused tremendous demand shock. So everyone's trying to, and the supply chains, there's been tremendous shock to the supply chains. Consider that now we are all home, whereas we would go out and eat at restaurants. Well, now we're all going to grocery stores and buying things. So the way we're consuming things has changed, and it changed very dramatically and very quickly. So there's a lot of demand shock to the system. So the other thing we were doing when we go to the grocery store, not only did it have to shift because we're not eating out as much. When we go to the grocery stores, we're trying to limit our time within the grocery store and limit our trips. So people are tending to stock up more, and then you see the empty shelves, which makes you even more nervous, and then you stock up even more. So we're seeing different ways in which we are consuming things. So what we're trying to do as we navigate these grocery store complaints is try to see where there's actual price gouging and how much is this a demand shock that kind of just needs to work itself out. So we received about, I think, 1,400 price gouging complaints related to anything from mass to groceries or anything, and we're going through them and looking for patterns. And there's a couple areas in the grocery realm that have stood out for AGs, and a couple of those are eggs and beef. So, for example, Texas just took action against a national egg producer, as did Minnesota. So those may be areas where you've noticed potentially slightly higher prices on eggs or beef. From what we've seen, the egg prices are kind of evening out right now, but we're still looking on those areas, and we're aware of it, and we are watching grocery prices and the complaints that we receive. As far as beef, our Attorney General just sent a letter along with several other AGs to U.S. Attorney General Barr, urging DOJ to investigate antitrust concerns in the cattle industry. So as the letter notes, the current pandemic makes the potential for market manipulation even greater. So the pricing for beef and cattle is also on AG radar right now. But please continue to submit price gouging complaints, because even if we get one complaint and you think, well, it's not that big a deal because it's not that great of a price increase, if you send that and I have 5 more or 10 more of those, we may be able to develop a pattern and try to figure out what's going on. So please continue to submit those complaints, because we really want to crack down on this so far as it's out there. I'm going to turn to the next slide, please. Other scams issues that we're looking at, as Todd mentioned before, selling and advertising fake cures and treatments. As many of you may have heard, we filed a lawsuit against Morningside Church Productions, doing business as the Jim Bakker Show Ministry, relating to the sale of Silver Solution. That case is in litigation. So far, the defendants have filed a motion to dismiss, and we are litigating that case. Also, things that we have received complaints about, and we've actually issued a couple cease and desist letters in this area, is falsely advertising a product is able to kill the virus. There I'm talking about not an ingestible cure, but like a disinfectant product. Some products are claiming you can use this to kill the virus. And what we realized is that the EPA, we dug into this deeper, the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, actually has a list, it's called List N, of certain disinfectant products that can represent that they're able to kill viruses. So if you see a product that represents it's able to kill a virus, you should check that list, because that is a good way to check and make sure that the claims that you're seeing on this are actually true. Another area, fake COVID-19 testing. I think as testing becomes more widespread, we might see this more, so be on the lookout for it. CARES Act and stimulus, CARES Act Payment Protection Plan and stimulus checks. Todd went through that. Those are areas that are ripe for scams. So please be on the lookout and certainly report anything to our office. And finally, we're seeing complaints about event and travel cancellations. With those, we take a look and we try to look at the contract and see what we can do, if anything, for the consumer in this event. Again, it usually comes down to what's in your contract as far as what can be resolved in that area. You know, but another thing that we've realized is a lot of good companies are, even despite what their contract says, making good for the consumer and offering at least something. So just as a consumer, I'm personally looking at companies to see how they treat people during this time, and that'll make a difference to who I do business with in the future. And I think a lot of consumers are probably doing the same. So turning to the final slide, is there one in between with our contact? Oh, well, it doesn't look like there is, but I will just read it off to everyone. You can contact us. We have a hotline, and we also can take complaints over the website. Our phone number for our consumer hotline is 1-800-392-8222. That's 1-800-392-8222. And our no-call hotline is 1-866-662-2551. Again, 1-866-662-2551. And then online, you can reach us at ago.mo.gov. That's ago.mo.gov. And through that, you can file any consumer complaint. You can report price gouging. We have a specific form. You can register for our no-call list, or you can file a no-call complaint. But I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And please contact us during these times. We are certainly here to help. I'll turn it over to Michelle.
Well, thank you, Amy, and thank you, Todd. BBB also has been inundated with reports about COVID-related scams, so we're appreciative to have this opportunity to share some of this information with you. I also want to remind everyone that bbb.org, it is a resource for you. You can go there to check out the reputation of a business, to learn about a charity, to post a review. If you have a complaint, to go there, and we'll try to get that rectified for you. And it's also a place for you to go to get pre-purchase industry tips, and also our latest reports on scams, alerts, and warnings. So next slide, I want to share with you some of the top scams reported to BBB's scam tracker. Since you just heard about the top 3 scams, I'm going to focus on the bottom 3. So employment scams, fake charities, and fraudulent websites selling, and yes, it's non-existent pets. Also fake websites are websites out there selling fake COVID-related products. So next slide. So here's a warning that the Better Business Bureau recently issued about employment scams. And as all of you probably have heard, the St. Louis area business community recently laid off about 20,000 workers. And as a result, we're starting to see new scams targeting the unemployed to steal their money or identity. And in some cases, they're designed to do both with some of these schemes we're seeing. BBB is urging job seekers to beware of unsolicited job offers. These usually are designed to lure you in by promising high pay, little skills, and the ability to work remotely. And to get the job, a candidate usually has to fill out a form requiring personal information and sensitive information such as your social security number, your date of birth, and sometimes they will require payment to buy equipment for the job. And an applicant typically, unbeknownst to them, they're being set up to either having their identity stolen or they will not receive reimbursement for equipment purchase that they were told that was needed for their job. And then some of these scams, the employee is sent a payroll check that includes an overpayment. And the employee will be asked to refund the company with their personal check. And later they find that the overpayment check did not clear their bank, it was fake, and that the bank, and then the fraudster has deposited their personal check. So we're seeing those types of scams with unemployment. And also we have found that recently, the BBB scam tracker complaints on unemployment was analyzed, and we found that about the average loss was about $1,500. We also received a report recently from a Jefferson City man. He said he lost $5,000 on unemployment scam, and a Granite City man reported losing $3,000. So this is real. They are taking advantage of unemployed people right now. And so you just need to be educated so that you don't fall victim to these types of scams. Next, I want to share with you some information about fake charities. Fake charities often appear after any natural disaster or tragedy. And this is a time, unfortunately, where people tend to let their guard down. They think with their hearts instead of their heads. And so we're reminding everyone to give wisely. Some deceptive solicitations will tend to take advantage of well-known, reputable charities using names that are maybe slightly different or a slightly different URL address. For example, you may receive a solicitation from America Red Cross instead of American Red Cross. So don't be rushed into making any kind of decision. Any good charity today will be around later to accept your donation. And there are a number of ways to check out a charity. For instance, most reputable charities, you can go to their website and learn more about their purpose. What is their mission, the programs they offer, look at their governance structure and their board roster and finances. They usually have a link to their annual reports and financial statements. You can also go to GuideStar and look up a IRS 990 form that's required for charities to also file with the Internal Revenue Service. And these forms will provide you information about how much money is spent on overhead and salaries and expenses, or how much actually goes to services and programs. Again, we have seen some charities first are just bogus charities, but then we've also seen charities that spend way too much money on fundraising and not enough on their programs. And then there are 40 states that require charities to register either through the Attorney General's office or the Secretary of State's office. So that's another place to go to see if they are registered to solicit in the state. You can also do an online search for potential scams with charities. You can either search by an individual's name, if given, or the charity name. And when you do your search, maybe a Google search, add in the word like complaint or scam with your search and see if others have posted out somewhere saying don't give to this organization. It's nothing more than a scam. And then crowdsourcing fundraisers. It's starting to see a lot of crowdsourcing, and many of these for great causes to help local families or restaurants that are having difficulty staying in business. But just make sure you verify the cause and the fundraiser. Are these people actually linked to the people who receive these contributions? And then know with crowdsourcing, typically this cannot be considered a tax deduction on your tax forms. And then another good resource is bbb.org. At the Better Business Bureau, we have standards. We look at a charity, we evaluate them, and see how their money is spent, see kind of governance they have. Do they have annual reports? We look at 20 different areas, and then we report if the company, if an organization meets those 20 standards, and if so, they are considered a BBB accredited charity. So you can go to bbb.org to check out a charity as well. Next slide. So now we want to talk about some of the websites that we're seeing pop up as a result of people in need of certain products, for instance, to do with COVID-19. And you'll see this one is a company that we investigated that was brought to our attention. It's a screenshot of a company by the name of Alpha Medical Supplies. It claims to have been in business for many years and have a physical location in Chesterfield, Missouri. But through our investigation, what we found is that the website was just created on February 29th, and the company was not located at the address it claimed to be located. Next slide. So with this one, you can see it's almost an identical website. So it just really demonstrates how easy it is to cut and paste and create a new URL for a new company. And this is a screenshot of a company doing business under the name of Atlantic Medical Supplies. Now, our investigation found that this website was just created March 16th, and it claimed to be a local company as well. You know, they're trying to convince individuals in this region that this is a local company, you can trust us, we have the products you need, just order from us. But with this company as well, we found out that this address that they're advertising on their website is not affiliated with this company at all, is actually a residential address. And we found the owner of the home and interviewed them, and they have confirmed that they have no affiliation whatsoever with this company. We suspect what happens is that if you order supplies, you will not receive those, and then it'll be very difficult to get your money back. So you have to really be careful with what websites you're doing business with right now to order any of your COVID-19 related supplies that you might need. Next slide. So yesterday, the Better Business Bureau issued another warning to people in the area considering purchasing a pet online. This can be extremely dangerous for many reasons. We're just finding hundreds of recent reports that have been posted to BBB Scam Tracker about purchasing a pet. It's usually a puppy, and online, only to find that they have been duped into sending hundreds of dollars for non-existent pets. We're encouraging consumers not to purchase pets online, sight unseen. And typically with this scam, how it works, that you are asked to wire money, in some cases purchase gift cards for payment. Typically, the perpetrator of this type of scam will tell you that unfortunately you can't see the pet at this time because of the quarantine that we're all under, and they'll have pictures of pets for you to look at and decide if you want it. They're very convincing. Sometimes they follow up with phone calls emails to provide additional information for you. But typically what happens if you fall in love with that pet you see on the website, you reach out to the seller and then you're told you will need money either to ship that pet to you, or they may ask for additional money for vaccinations of the pet, or maybe it became ill. Then you find after 2, 3, 4 times of making payment, usually again wire service, then you realize you've been scammed. And Better Business Bureau continues to receive these types of reports. We continue to see more and more websites pop up selling these pets. And typically, if you copy the text of the ad or photos of the pets being advertised and do a reverse Google search, you'll find that these same pets are being advertised on multiple websites. And an earlier study conducted by the Better Business Bureau found that about 80% of the websites selling pets are connected and somewhat bogus. These are some of the information we were able to learn back in 2017. We suspect some of this continues today. So just extra cautious. If you're lonely right now, you're tired of being confined to your home and you're looking for a pet to keep you company, you can also reach out to your local animal shelters. We understand that they have a lot of pets ready to be adopted. So check out any seller of a pet. And then next slide. This is the Better Business Bureau Scam Tracker. This is where you can report a scam and look for scams others have reported as well. It's basically a heat map that allows you to drill down to your own neighborhood to see what reports have been made. And you can see by some of those numbers there, if you just click on, for instance, that 407 number, then it will spread out and then you can see what's going on in your actual city and click in and see what others have reported in your area. What kind of scams are being targeted for your region for whatever reason. And in this case, we're finding more and more of these scams are COVID related, which doesn't really surprise us. And the next slide, you'll see that below that heat map, when you go online to BBB Scam Tracker, you'll find the date, and this is just a screenshot of some of the recent reports we have received. The date a scam report was filed, what type of scam it is, the postal code of the reporter, the individual who reported the scam, where they reside. And then consumers are also asked to post the dollars lost. And then under details, you can click on where it says view to learn more about what their experience was, how the scam worked, why they fell for it, their word of caution to you. And then you can sort these lists too to learn more about what's, again, being reported in your neighborhood. And so most of these here that you see in front of you, these have to do with online purchases related to COVID-19 products, and in some cases, purchasing of pets. And so we encourage you to use this, and it not only use it for a learning experience, but also use it if you have been victimized, or even if you didn't lose money. We encourage you to post your experience, again, for others can learn by it. And Better Business Bureau's investigators also use this to determine what areas of investigation we should be conducting, but also then to issue some public news warnings and news alerts and get out on the news media to reach a larger audience. So we can only report what we know, so we encourage you to use this resource that's available to you. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Todd, and as you can see, Federal Trade Commission, their resources are in front of you, Missouri Attorney General's office, and Better Business Bureau's resources here too, regarding where you can go to file a complaint, check out a company, learn about our latest scams and tips. And then I also wanted to point out that we do have a resource page devoted just to coronavirus resources, tips and warnings, and you just type in bbb.org/coronavirus, and there's resources not only for consumers, but there's also a landing page of resources for businesses. Todd?
Thanks, Michelle. And that concludes our webinar. I just want to, at the end, again, thank everybody for signing in to the webinar today. And please reach out to any of the agencies on the screen if you encounter a scam or if you encounter price gouging, as Amy was talking about. We want to hear about those things. So use the information that's on the screen to reach out to us, because we do want to help. And again, I want to thank the Better Business Bureau for hosting the webinar today, and thank all of you for joining. Thanks very much.